Hey guys, I'm going to be starting a new app development series with Swift and Xcode. We're specifically going to be looking at Apple's new sort of library called Swift UI. On this page here, we have Swift UI, and it's telling us that you can make better apps with less code. That's sort of the tagline here. And Swift UI is an innovative, exceptionally simple way to build user interfaces across all Apple platforms with the power of Swift. So if you don't know what Swift is, it's basically the most popular programming language used to make Apple applications. And Swift UI basically uses this language to allow us to edit the user interface of our apps. The reason why Swift UI is really interesting is because earlier, when developers were developing applications, they would have to manually drag and drop buttons and images and text into their sort of what was called a storyboard for an app to create their user interface. The user interface is just the screen or the layout of the app that the user is looking at and interacting with, which is why it's called a user interface. And when you have to manually create user interfaces, sometimes that can take time, and developers wanted a quick way to do this. So Apple came up with Swift UI, which allows us to edit the user interface of an app through code. And typing out this code is probably much more faster than having to drag it inside a storyboard or a view or something like that manually. Throughout this series, I'm going to show you how to use Swift UI. I'm going to offer you some tutorials, but just remember that this library is very new. I'm pretty sure it only came out a few months ago, and that means I personally still have a lot to learn about Swift UI. I am in no means an expert at this. So, we'll learn together as we do this series. So to begin, obviously we're going to need to download and install Xcode. And we can do this on Mac fairly easily. All you have to do is go to the App Store on your computer and then just type in Xcode and it should appear here. As you can see, it's number 1 in developer tools because of course the app made by Apple is going to be number 1 on the Apple charts. And you're just going to want to download this here. Some requirements you're going to need to download Xcode, the latest version, is that you need to be on the latest operating system of Mac OS. So that means you're going to need to upgrade to Big Sur if you haven't done so already. Now, I'm going to tell you that I did have a few problems when upgrading to Big Sur, specifically with my circumstance. Your circumstance may be different. I'm going to leave some of the problems I ran into in the description, so please check that out before you upgrade to Big Sur. Also, when you're downloading Xcode, you'll notice this size here. It's saying 11.6 gigabytes. This is a complete lie. This Xcode application is going to take up a lot more space than 11 gigabytes. I've read articles that have said that you need at least 40 gigabytes for Xcode to run properly. And that's because Xcode has a ton of virtual iPhone environments where you can test and deploy your app to, so it's going to install all of those on your computer. And also the projects themselves have a lot of assets that take up a lot of space. So, you're going to want to make sure that you clear out some space before downloading Xcode, or else you're not going to be able to create anything really. Also, if you're thinking about downloading Xcode on an external hard drive, I read that it's not recommended, and this is because a lot of the features of Xcode are integrated into the Mac itself, like some of the virtual environments that are used to test your apps. So make sure or try to at least download it on your physical hard drive. Once you have Xcode downloaded, you're going to be brought to this screen when you open it up, and you're going to click Create a New Xcode Project. It's going to bring you here, and you're going to want to select the app and just press Next. Then you're going to give your app a name. So for this tutorial, we're going to be creating an app called Turtle Rock, and I'll get to this a little bit later, but that's going to be the name. And then you want to select a team. So this is usually, if you're just a hobbyist, your personal team. And if you don't have a team set up, it's going to like prompt you to log into iCloud or something with an email, and that's how you're going to get that. And then organization identifier, I just put the name of my YouTube channel, so com.roboticnation, but you can put com.yourname or something along those lines. This is your sort of company or organization. Right under here, your bundle identifier, that's going to be the unique identifier that your app has, so it can be differentiated from other apps that are on the App Store. For interface, you want to keep it at Swift UI or select Swift UI if you have not done that. Lifecycle, Swift UI app, language, Swift, and you want to leave all these boxes unchecked. And then you're going to press Next and create that project. It's going to open a development environment for you. Okay, you're going to save this project to somewhere on your computer, and this is this is the screen that you should be looking at right now. If you don't see this, then you want to go to the side window here with all of the files, and you might have to click open this arrow and open the contentview.swift file. This file is going to be auto-generated by just creating an app from the Xcode project, and you want to click this and open this file. So in this file, we have some starter code. First, we're importing Swift UI. That's going to allow us to use all of the functionalities of this library. And then we have a few other things here. If you have some programming experience in a language like Java, then I'm actually excited to tell you that Swift is very similar to Java in its object orientation and the way it has structures and classes. It's very similar to Java, except the syntax is a little bit different, but that's going to be with all programming languages. So if you know a little Java, that's going to help. If you don't know Java, that's alright. I'm still going to teach you what all of this means. Maybe not in this video, but in the other tutorials. So the main thing in this file right here, in our contentview.swift, first let's understand what exactly is this file. Contentview.swift is our sort of main screen of our app. A view in terms of apps and Xcode is basically a screen on your app. So your app may just have one screen. For example, the calculator app, the Apple calculator app, only has one screen, I'm pretty sure. That's a single view app, but a lot of apps have more than one view. And when you have more than one view, you're going to create more contentview.swift files, but obviously you'll name them to something else. Maybe you'll call it mapview.swift or something like that if you're showing a map. Anyway, right now we have this one view that represents our user interface of the app. So the contentview.swift is where we're going to put all of our elements, all of our styling to make the user interface really stand out. Now, from my understanding, the logic of our app is going to be mostly inside of this turtle rock app.swift or other files similar to it. What's happening now in this file is basically we're just running what we have inside our content view, so we're just displaying our view. Now, something really cool about Swift UI is that it doesn't have a storyboard. And instead of a storyboard, it has this canvas, is what it's called. If you can't see the canvas right now, you want to go to Editor and go to Canvas. I don't know if you can see that on my screen, but on the top bar, you want to click Editor and then check Canvas, and then this view is going to pop up for you. This is the preview window, and basically what it's going to do, it's gonna render all of your code and show you what it actually looks like as a user interface. So this is really helpful. It updates pretty much automatically when you're editing your code. For example, I'm just gonna do something simple here. I'm gonna change the text color to blue, and as you can see, it updated in the window right here as we typed in our code. If your preview is not showing up, you might have to click resume preview. It should be a little pop-up that comes up there. One thing to take note of with this preview is that this is slightly different from actually running your app in a virtual environment. So, similar to the old Xcode or without Swift UI, you would preview your app by going up here and then selecting a device. So iPhone 11 I have, and you would click this play button, and if I do that, it's going to build my code, and it's going to take a while the first time you build it because it has to actually install your app. And in that case, you're actually running your app, and sometimes you're going to need to do this for functionalities that are not going to be able to show up just in the preview. You're going to actually have to run the app. So since this is taking way too long, I'm actually going to stop running this if I can. Okay, so it canceled the build. That's alright. And automatic preview updating pause. Let's resume that. And there it's going to preview. Alright, now let's talk about this line of code here that says struct content view. A structure in Swift is very similar to a class in Java. And if you don't know what either of those are, then that's alright. I'm going to get into that in a later video. But this is basically just a default piece of code that you're going to need. And inside of this var body, this is where we are going to create and put all of our elements. So right now, if I just get rid of it, this thing that I added, the foreground color, this was what was put there in the beginning. We have a text element, and it says hello world, and it has what's called a modifier that gives it some padding. So this is going to be the format for the majority of your elements. You're going to have something that's like text here, and then you can add a bunch of modifiers. So if I wanted to change the text here to, let's just call it Turtle Rock, the name of our app, we can do that. And we have padding here. Let's see what happens when we delete this padding. And if we click back on here, you notice that the border around this, highlighting the Turtle Rock, has become smaller. There's no longer space around it. So padding basically provides us a bit of space around our elements. So I'm actually going to add that back. And the way we can do that more easily, instead of having to type it out, what we can do is head to this panel on the right here and make sure you're in this section called Attributes Inspector. And inside of here, we have a few modifiers that are already here for us. We can change the text here. So if I wanted to change it to Turtle Rocks, press enter, and it updates in our code actually. Let's change it back. And there's a bunch of other modifiers here too. We can change the font. So let's change this to a large title. And as you can see, our font changes to a large title here. It automatically generates that code. Now we wanted to give our element padding. What we can do is go to this padding section and just click all of the places we want our element to have padding. So we want it all around. And as you can see here, it says .all. Now you're probably wondering, well, before there was nothing inside of these brackets. And it was the same thing. There was padding all around the edges. And that's because the default value passed in to this padding modifier is .all. So if we delete this, nothing's going to change. It's still going to pass in the .all parameter. Alright, now let's get into what we're actually going to be making in this tutorial. We're going to be making a sort of single page for a tourist attraction called Turtle Rock. And I got the resources and some inspiration for the code from the Apple Swift UI tutorials page. I have the link to that project in the description. The SwiftUI tutorials page is a website full of tutorials that help you learn SwiftUI. So I've been sort of going through that and spending my time there trying to figure out what is actually going on with this language. And I'm not just copying the code from there. I do have some differences in my code just to sort of teach you guys. And also, all of this code will be available on my GitHub, so you can look there if you are having trouble following along with the video, but I highly suggest you follow along and actually do it yourself. That's how you're going to learn. Before we begin, you are going to need to download that resource, the one image that we're going to need for this project, and that is going to be available on my GitHub. It's just one image, and you just need to download it. And what you're going to do is go to this assets folder, and as you can see, I already have it inside of here, but you're going to want to drag the image into this area, and it's automatically going to go into this 2x category. The 1x, 2x, and 3x are different size pictures for different devices, so we're just going to work with the 2x for now, but typically apps will have all of these, so their app looks pretty decent on every device. Let's go back to our content view.swift and get started. We are going to delete this starter text, and as we do this, we are going to first add all of the elements we're going to need. And I'll show you guys on the screen what we're going to be creating. So the first element we have is an image, and the way we can get images is by simply typing image and then parentheses, and then we're going to input the name of our image. So in our case, our image is named Turtle Rock. It's in, again, that was the image in our assets folder, and all we have to do is do that, and it's inside of our preview right now. We're going to modify some aspects of this image. We want to make it so that it's a circle and not a square. The way we can do that is by using the modifier called clip shape. Now, I also forgot to mention that if you don't want to actually type a modifier in, or you don't know a modifier, you can go to the attributes inspector and go to this search bar called add modifier, and these are all the modifiers you can add. So, let's see, we want the clip shape modifier. So if I click that and I make sure I'm near my image, Turtle Rock, then it's going to add that for me automatically. And it actually defaulted a clip shape of circle, so that's what it looks like. Now what we want to do is add a stroke and a little bit of a shadow to our image. And the way we are going to do that is actually overlay another circle on top of it. I know it sounds a little complicated, but it looks pretty nice, and I actually got this from the Apple or the Swift tutorials themselves, this part of the code. To add more than one modifier, all you have to do is press enter, and then when you type the dot, it should already indent for you. And we're going to add the overlay modifier. And this time we're just going to type it out, because why not? Alright, inside of these parentheses, we want to define a circle, and we want to set the stroke of the circle to have a color of white, and then a comma, and we're going to add a line width of 4. So that code seems a little complicated, but what we're doing is we're creating an overlay that's a circle, and we're setting this specific modifier of the circle to a stroke that has a white color and a line width of 4. Now what we want to do is, right now you can't even see the outline or the overlay of the circle because it's white and it blends in with the background. So let's add a shadow to this shape. what we're going to do is press enter and do a dot again to specify a new modifier. We're going to call this shadow, and we're going to give this a radius of 10. So it actually defaults to 10. You can delete that comma there if you have that. And now it looks something like this. That looks a lot better to me. That looks very Apple-like. I don't know. Looks like the styling that Apple uses for some of their products. Now to add our next element, we're going to need to embed it within or in the same sort of group as the image element, because we want everything to align with each other and be in the same view. And the way we can do this is with what's called a VStack, which stands for vertical stack, and allows you to organize elements vertically. And the way we can add a VStack is by clicking the image or whatever you want to embed in the VStack, hold down Command and then click, and it should bring up this menu, and you're going to go to Embed in VStack. So there's 3 stacks here. We got HStack, VStack, ZStack. HStack is for aligning things horizontally. We'll look at those. And VStack is for aligning things in the Z space. So on top of each other in the front and back. We're not going to get into ZStack too much just because we don't need it for this UI. But we're going to embed in a VStack. Now that we have this VStack, nothing's changed. All it's done really is put all of our code that we had and put it inside of this thing called VStack with the curly braces. So you don't need to add VStacks that way with the command click. You can really just create it like this and type this out if that's easier for you. And now what we can do is create a text element. And inside of here, we are going to say Turtle Rock. All right, that text element is looking pretty weak, so let's add some modifiers. Let's give it a font of title. And again, whichever you prefer, you can do this in the Attributes tab, or you can type it out. That's the really nice thing about Swift UI. We're going to change the font weight to dot, semi-bold. And a lot of these things will auto-complete for you, so that's really nice if you press tab. And now we're going to add some padding to it as well. Alright, so that's our styling for our text. Now, in the image you saw before, there was a divider, a little line across that was a little bit gray, and it sort of divided the content, and we can get one of those inside of our UI by typing divider, and it should just create a divider for us like that. And then below that, we had more text saying text Joshua Tree National Park. And then we also have had text California, which was lined up horizontally, so you might guess that we use a horizontal stack or an H stack to align that. We're going to do that later on. I'm just trying to get all of the actual elements out. And we're also going to need an about Turtle Rock. And then we obviously are going to need our very great description that is going to tell us a bit about Turtle Rock that I wrote myself. Turtle Rock is a cool rock that is cool. Very cool indeed. It is awesome. So this was the best description I could come up with at the time of creating this tutorial. And I think it's pretty good. Right now, this user interface doesn't look very good. I mean, everything's smushed together. It's all convoluted. Looks like everything's the same. The only thing that looks pretty nice is the title and this little circle thing we created with the image. Alright, you can see my screen is on dark mode now, and that's because I have auto turned on and it's nighttime, so it's dark mode. But now that we have all of our sort of elements or structures set up, we can go ahead and embed each of these in a stack, whether it be vertical or horizontal, depending on how we want to align things. So again, I'm going to resume this preview just so we can see. And this is what it looks like right now. We're going to add some more user interface styling, especially to this text down here, to make it a lot nicer. So we have everything in this one big VStack, but we want to make a separate VStack for the image. And this is going to allow us to space things out later on. So an easy way to do this is to hover over the image or click near the image and then press Command and then click. And then you want to select Embed in VStack. So just do that and it'll put all of the code you already wrote into a VStack. So that's really handy for us. We're also going to make another VStack for some of our text elements. So we actually want to put all of these text elements into their own VStack. So I think I can just highlight these and click it, and if I say embed in VStack, I can do that, and it looks like it only embedded the first one, but I'm just going to cut and paste this inside of here, and now it looks like we have everything embedded in that VStack. Yeah, I know it's a little hard to read, the spacing's not that good for reading. And one thing I want to add to this VStack is I want to change the alignment. I want the alignment to be leading. So what that means is, notice how all of this text is in the center of the screen. All of it is centered. When we specify our alignment to be of dot leading, that's going to change all of the alignments to be the left side of the screen. So it's going to align like that. And the reason I'm putting all of these in the same VStack is to do exactly that, to align all of them accordingly like this. So VStacks are a great way to organize all of your elements. Alright, so next we want to have the Joshua Tree National Park and the California text aligned next to each other horizontally. And for that we're going to use a HStack. And I'm also actually going to create an HStack for Turtle Rock too. So Turtle Rock we have here, command click again, and we're going to embed this in an HStack. Alright, that's embedded now. And then we're going to go down to our text for the Joshua Tree and command click that and also embed that in an HStack. And we want to move this California text inside of that HStack as well. Now we see that the Joshua Tree and the California are aligned next to each other. And we're going to configure the spacing between those in just a bit. For the about text and the description, we are just going to leave that inside of the main VStack. We're not going to add anything else to that because it's kind of grouped already. Now, what we are going to do to a lot of these properties is add some spacing as well as modifiers. So let's go back, and we've already done mostly everything for our circle. We added all the modifiers, but we do need to continue to add the modifiers for the Turtle Rock text. So for our Turtle Rock text, we actually only want to have padding for the top, the leading, and the trailing. We're not going to have any bottom padding. So I did that by using the attributes inspector but there's also this way to do it in the code if you want to do it that way. For the text Joshua Tree, we're going to add some padding to that, and we're going to set the padding to just leading padding. So dot leading, and that's just going to give it some space in the front there. Also, what we want to do here is add what's called a spacer, and a spacer is what it sounds like. It creates a space between elements, and it makes sure the space takes up the entire width of the screen. So as we add more and more spacers, it's going to balance the space in the screen with the elements. So you'll see what I mean in a little bit when we add more spacers, but I'm just going to put a spacer between those two texts there. And I'm also going to add trailing padding, what's called, or you can call it right padding. And to do that, we're just going to do dot trailing. And now it looks sort of like this. Now, if we wanted to apply things to both of these properties without typing them twice, so for example, let's say I wanted both the font colors to be blue, what I can do is, if they are embedded in a stack, for example, they're embedded in this H stack, we can go down and actually add a modifier to the H stack. So we're going to add the font modifier for this H stack, and we're going to call this font dot subline. We're going to use dot subline. And we're also going to change the foreground color, which is just the font color, to blue. And we're pretty much done with that. Now let's move on to the about Turtle Rock text. We're going to change the font weight to medium. We are going to add some padding on this element. We are going to change the font to dot headline. Also, just to show you, you can change the background color of elements by using the background property, and then you can put a color. So you can say color dot, let's say pink, just for an example, and that's going to turn it pink. That doesn't really look like pink to me. That's a weird pink. But anyways, I'm just going to leave this as color.white just to show you how you can use the background color, but it's not going to really make a difference here. And we're done with that. Moving on to the description, we're just going to give this some padding. So dot padding. And we want to give this padding on the left and right. So if we click both of those, it's, as you can see in the code, it gives us this property that says horizontal. So from my understanding, some of the different combinations of padding have special names, and we're also going to add a spacer under this. Now this is going to make it look a little wonky, because what this spacer does, it takes up all the available space at the bottom of the screen if we put it there. So to get this in the middle of the screen, we're going to need to put a few spacers up top in our code to balance this spacer out, because right now it's taking up way too much space. So we're going to go back, and for our circle, we are right after the dot shadow modifier. We're going to add a spacer, and that's just going to give us some space there. And again, we're going to have to add a few more spacers to really balance this out. And we also want to add a spacer up here because we need to balance that out. And now it looks sort of a lot better. Let's see, did I forget any other spacers that we need? Okay, I think I have all of the spacers. This is just something I experimented with and that I liked for this view. Obviously, there's a ton of ways you can change it, make it better. So feel free to experiment with that. But hopefully you have a better understanding of what SwiftUI is and how you can get started with it. Thank you for watching, and please leave a like. We gotta beat that YouTube algorithm. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content. And hopefully I'll be posting again soon. Bye, guys.